Hey everyone, welcome to a Nerdy Bunch presentation of Back to the Future. We are the collective known as the Cosmic Duo. Cosmic? We are the collective known as the Cosmic Duo. We traverse the space-time continuum, watching movies 20 years or older to discuss their relevance then and how they hold up now. I'm your host, English Dave, and helping me sell curtain rings as earrings is my co-host, Rocket Mike.
What's up, Dave?
We are here for part 2 of our Planes, Trains, and Automobiles Back to the Future. Part 1, we had a general discussion on the film. If you haven't seen that, go back and check that out. And this is where we will actually take a deep dive into the film itself. Just as a reminder, this movie came out November 25th, 1987. And so that is a Thanksgiving movie, one of the very few Thanksgiving movies we found out. This stars Steve Martin, John Candy, and it was directed by John Hughes. He's done many movies you've probably heard of. Search his name or listen to the past podcast so you can get a list of those. The film starts off, the synopsis is as follows. Neil Page is somewhat of a control freak. Trying to get home to Chicago to spend Thanksgiving with his wife and kids, his flight is rerouted to a distant city in Kansas because of a freak storm, and his sanity begins to fray. Worse yet, he's forced to bunk up with talkative Dale Griffin, whom he finds extremely annoying. Together, they must overcome the insanity of holiday travel to reach their intended destination. We both said that we enjoyed this film for many highs and hilarity, but this is specifically why. I didn't realize this until analyzing the film. Excuse me. Each act is essentially planes, trains, and automobiles. And it makes sense, but that's how the movie's broken down. Right?
Yeah.
I was like, oh, duh.
Like, I wonder when they're going to get to these things.
Right.
But yeah, it is. It's like a 3-act play, you know. And of course, starting with the plane, which is obviously the most likely for anyone to take. But
right. I mean, it's the ones to take. And I love how this movie starts out, right? Because what this movie, again, it's one of those movies in like many simple movies, because it's a very simple movie, right? It's a straightforward movie. But because it's simple, the creatives used other places to kind of add a little bit of exposition or style or flair, whatever. Because the movie, the first thing we see is New York 2 days before Thanksgiving. And so instantly we know this is a ticking clock. He has to get somewhere or there's a reason why it's 2 days before Thanksgiving. So we already have a timeline going on for us. And I love the opening scene with his boss, because he works at an ad agency trying to decide which one is better than the other.
Oh my God. You felt that too.
Right.
And every time he's about to open his mouth, he's like,
it reminded me, have you seen Zootopia?
Yeah.
The sloths?
Yes.
That's what it reminded me of. Just like,
first time, I was crying laughing the first time I saw that scene. I'm like, oh God, this is so accurate.
And I don't know if you noticed it. I didn't notice it until literally watching it for this podcast. There's an end credit clip and the boss is still there trying to decide.
Oh really?
Yeah,
I missed that.
There's an end credit sequence in the film.
Oh
I was
man.
like, oh shit. I mean, I guess John Hughes, because he did it in what's it called? Ferris Bueller, right? So I guess he likes a little end credit clip.
Oh man, I should have waited. Because I do remember seeing like the end credits to Ferris Bueller a long time ago. And
exactly.
I'm like, now I'm always going to wait to watch that scene. I'm like, I'm curious, like, what is it? Is it just like him and like it's all the lights are out and he's still?
Yeah, basically, he's still in the office, and he's still kind of like he's still in the office, sitting there trying to decide which one, and that's how the credits end. But I wonder now if John Hughes has end credit sequences for most of his movies. Like I don't know.
Right?
Thinking of it now,
have we been missing out on this Easter egg this whole time?
Does Breakfast Club have something? I don't know. He finally has to make a decision to leave the office, and I like again this intro does a lot of setting up, right? Because even his friend is like, "Oh, take a later plane, no rush," and he's like, "No, I'll take the earlier plane because I'm trying to be smart." I was like, okay, you try. And I love it because it's like trying to grab a cab in New York City a few days before Thanksgiving. Yeah, good luck with that. Before Uber existed.
Right. Yeah. A lot of this movie has to do with the issues that you face in the time of the late 80s that you wouldn't experience now.
No.
I mean, we'll get into that, but obviously right off the bat, yeah, that's one of them, to sacrifice your body to like throw in front of a car just to get it to stop, and and then eventually chasing down Kevin Bacon to get a cab.
We get a weird cameo. I haven't looked into why this is, but Kevin Bacon has a cameo, not even credited in terms of his character doesn't have a name. It's just like guy who tries to get taxi. But fun fact, a year later, Kevin Bacon would go on to release a movie directed by John Hughes called She's Having a Baby. And a lot of fans theorize that it's the same character because he looks the same, you know. And another
Okay.
fun fact, later on in this film, Neil's wife is watching a movie and you're hearing it, and the movie he's watching is She's Having a Baby. But this is a year before it came out. It's like, oh shit.
That's so weird. It's
So
like a time capsule movie here,
right. That's really cool as a director. Tease your next movie in your current movie.
right?
But no one knows it
Like what you see. Oh,
right.
okay.
um, I love the moment where he bribes the guy for to take his cab, only for Dell to take the cab away from him, and he's just like running after the cab.
That
Like,
scene too. I was just thinking, you're on Park Avenue. The sidewalks are filled with people
mhm,
and running right in the Park Ave, chasing down this guy. I'm like, what a shot for one.
right?
You know, like I don't know if these are all extras, if these are all real people, if this is all like obviously maybe like real traffic. What is everyone thinking with Steve Martin just running in the middle of the street? And I'm like,
Right.
how did this shot get made? Like what took it into that?
Mm.
But
It was the '80s. They stole the shot.
yeah, right. Just go, just do it.
Just go
Run.
fuck it, run. But he's unsuccessful, and unfortunately, he has to figure out another way to get to the airport. What I love is that again, little tidbits where he's like, "Oh, my gloves. I don't care about the gloves. That's gonna come back to bite you." And gets to the airport. Unfortunately, all flights are delayed, and again, we get a little piece of added tension by showing the family back home waiting for daddy. Again, the ticking clock keeps on going. We are with this guy trying to get home, but then he meets Dell, and I love the part where he meets Dell at the airport, and Dell's like, he's looking at him like, I recognize you. And Dell's like, oh yeah, you're that guy. Oh, come to think, and he's like, oh yeah, you're the guy that tried to take my cab. Like, bitch, you stole my cab. And I love when he says, oh yeah, come to think of it, I did find it very easy to catch a cab at rush hour. I was like, yeah, no shit.
Again, like we'll get into it later, but like this guy is like the nicest person you'll meet, but completely oblivious
Completely.
to everyone else's reactions and actions around him. Like I don't think he sees how he's affecting anyone else, although he's trying to mean so well.
Mm-hmm. And we see our first example of that is when after Neil can't get into his first class seat, he's in coach now, right next to Dell, and love when Dell takes his socks off. It's like, ugh.
Like that's just in your
And he
face.
starts
Like now you're just
spinning it. It's like,
I'm thinking this guy's fucking with me now. Like
it's
this
like,
is an act. I don't know what this is.
okay. And this is what happens next. When they land in Kansas instead of Chicago because of snow. This is rewatching the film. This is the first time we start getting hints of what's really going on with Dell. You don't notice it until hindsight because he mentions to Neil and says, "I bet you that the flight's going to get canceled," and then they do. And it's almost like he's done this so many times. He knows the patterns. He already knows what's going to happen, and so that in hindsight lets you know, okay, what is his life like? That he's done this so much that he knows the pattern. They end up getting stuck in Wichita because the flights are canceled. And again, Dell knew this ahead of time. While everyone else was trying to figure out flights, he was booking his hotel. Again, it tells you, this is something that he's been through often. And Neil pays for the cab. They end up going to the motel. And again, it's just a minor moment, but I liked when the cab driver's like, "Oh, your friend doesn't know, so I'm taking the scenic route." And I thought that was going to go to more things. I thought it was
Yeah,
gonna
same. Because it was a very let's call it like a flamboyant taxi driver. He was so proud of just being so unique and having this like rock star taxi cab all souped up and all these decorations and even how he's dressed. Again, I thought, I'm like, this is a really elaborate character. Where is this going?
Yeah.
And that's actually another that actor. I recognized him from Home Alone. He was working at a police station. He answered a phone when his mother was calling, like, "Oh, we'll get someone around, check on him." He's very nonchalant about it. I'm like, of course, yeah, no wonder they couldn't find this kid. The cops are taking such their time on it. It's like, oh, it's no big deal. Go around.
Again, great directing, because when they go to the motel and pay with their cards, we get a subtle moment where the cards are switched, right? And and I didn't realize it's Neil's fault, because the hotel manager puts the card down and Neil grabs it straight away, and I was like, oh, Neil, it was your fault that your thing got switched. But I love the sequence when they get to the room and Del takes a shower, and you just see the mess when Neil goes in there. It's just like towels everywhere.
I was even going to point out that it was I like the little like that realization that it's just one bed
Hmm.
in the room and they're looking at each other, and then suddenly Dell was like, "You want to take a shower?" And he's like, "Oh no, like you go first." And then it's like, "Oh yeah, what am I talking about?" Of course.
And he just takes like the little piece of towel to try to dry himself with.
Yeah, the face towel for your entire body.
Again, the
Like,
physical
wow.
comedy is done really well. Again, another teaser moment. Dells looks at a picture of his wife, and you kind of brush that off, right? And you think, okay, he's just
Yeah.
he's just looking at a picture of his wife. But then you think, why is it such a big picture? It's framed, it's huge. No one carries that
Right.
around with
Yeah.
him. It makes sense in hindsight that he would be
Hmm.
carrying that, as opposed to someone who's just happens to be away from his wife for a few weeks. You wouldn't carry a whole big frame like that,
Yeah. Or even like look at it for that long and so
right?
longingly.
Exactly, exactly. I love when Dell's trying to clear his nose, and he's like, "Well, I'm gonna snore all night if I don't do it. It's not my fault." And then this is what that breaks the back for Neil, and they have an argument. And Neil's rant comes. It's so mean. I think John Candy does a great job of giving you that kind of face that you're like, "Damn, Neil. I know you're right. I know
Yeah.
he's an asshole, but come on. Like, you didn't have to shout at him that badly. He just seemed like a big baby."
I almost thought this was a dialogue meant for somewhere closer towards the end of a movie.
Hmm. Hmm.
It seems like they had learned so much about each other in just less than a day
Hmm.
that they have the kind of, well, for what more on like on Neil, the nerve to
Hmm.
really call him out on everything that he feels like he's been doing wrong. I'm like, that's pretty early on to
Hmm.
just be completely straightforward with a stranger that you're
Hmm.
spending a night with. I figured like some filter, but this is a guy who's going through so much in such a short amount of time.
Exactly, exactly. I
I
think that's what
guess
it
like
is.
it makes sense in that context.
It's not really Dell. It's the frustrations that have built up, and then just
Yeah,
suddenly like this is the thing that breaks it. Um, Takes us to act number two. Though before we get there, their money is stolen. That's going to come back to haunt them later on. Act two, trains the next morning. I love how they wake up in each other's arms. It's
yeah.
like, why did you kiss my ear?
Kiss the ear. Why are you holding my hand?
Those aren't pillows. And then it gets worse, right? When Del runs to the bathroom, he's washing his face, and then just to see the socks. Oh.
Why would you trust any just standing water just to splash anywhere?
And then he wipes his face with the underwear. It just keeps getting worse.
Like,
Again,
this guy just not looking what he's doing outside. Like, you deserve that, man. You're not paying any attention right now.
well, then again, I've always said, I like to write, and I find that comedy is extremely hard to write when you think logically.
For sure.
You can't
And
think logic.
oh yeah, this is completely illogical all over the movie. You're
Right,
like,
right,
why would they do this? Why would they do it this way? And
right.
so many examples. I'll touch on to when I see it, but in a way, that's partly why it kind of took me out sometimes,
Yeah,
because you
yeah.
don't see this kind of comedy now.
No, no.
We would all be thinking the same thing, like, why would you do that? That doesn't make any sense,
I mean,
But you're not that person.
Home
You're not
Alone's
this
a
character.
Home Alone's a big culprit of that, right? You could
Oh,
really
for sure.
that movie falls
Oh
apart
yeah.
completely, and I think that's what pros and cons. I think that's what John Hughes is good at, because again, the moment, as silly as it is, it's still funny, even though
Mhm.
it's literally like the character would walk, you would see that sink straight away.
Yeah.
Point of view, it's all sold to us because of camera blocking. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
why it's funny. It's all camera blocking. I give respect to writers, community writers, and directors, because I would second guess everything and be like, no, that makes no sense. Like, don't do that. Whereas, you have to go for it and realize it doesn't make sense. Well,
Yeah.
it's funny, so it doesn't matter. They realized they were robbed, and instead of taking a plane again, Del says, they have better chance of taking the train rather than waiting for a flight. So he calls a friend of his who sends his friend Gus, who sends his son, played by another famous actor, Dylan Baker, which is just like a random cameo role.
It's full of that.
I love when they're trying to take the suitcases, and he's like, no, my wife would do it. She may. He's get out here, you lazy ass.
Like, where are they again? Oh,
Yeah.
Kansas.
She may be small, but she's strong. And she's carrying a baby, and he's like, get
Right.
out, you lazy ass. It's like,
I was like, oh no, it's okay. We got it.
But they finally make it on the train, and but there's no seats to get. I love how Neil's like, "Oh well, there's no seats for us. Oh, too bad." As if like he cared. He was very happy about that. Pretty sure.
Mm.
And he's on the train, and everything seems fine. You know, he's talking to the girl next to him. He thinks all his problems are done, but nope, because there's other plans for him. The train breaks down, and they end up on the bus. And I love the sequence where the couple is making out, and they just start staring at them, you know.
Yeah.
And they cut to smoking afterwards. They're like, "Yeah, we're
Yeah.
done." Oh, and when they're singing a song, and then Neil sings some random song, and I was like, "What the fuck is that song?"
And he's like,
Yeah,
Flintstones.
Flintstones. We all know
Everyone
the
knows that.
Flintstones. Yay, let's go there.
Which just goes to show that, like, yeah, he's still more of a likable guy, which is why he's so good at his job, which is why he's so friendly. He wants people to like him because he's good at it. Versus Neil, who is very, like, conservative, straight edge, very, business first. But, this is him growing. This is him, like, trying, to open up a little bit more. And it's because of the Del that he's even able to shine a little bit, at least try.
Which again takes us to the next scene, and we see that Del's a great salesman. He's able to sell earrings that are actually made out of curtain rings.
They were curtain rings, straight up, no question about it. They were curtain rings. You're like, money, take it.
Right, I love that. Well, I love the sequence where Neil calls home and no one's there because they're at the daughter's pageant. And then Del's like, "Oh man, those are the precious moments. You never get those back."
Oh my god.
It's like, okay.
Thanks, buddy.
And again, we get more hints about Del's past, right? He talks about how he's never home or rarely home, and he's like, again, we kind of chalk that up to, oh, he's always working. We don't really pay attention too much.
Yeah, he said he hasn't been home in 3 years?
Yeah, some shit like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he jokes. I was like, no, I mean, like, I'm not being home. Kind of tries to pass it off.
Yeah, like for a while. It's like, oh, okay, we could buy it for now.
And then again, watching the movie again with that hindsight, there's so much depth to some of the dialogue scenes. I pay attention to everything that Del is saying and his actions. But while they're having their lunch, Neil again suggests that they probably go solo from this point on. And, of course, Del is hurt by that, but he wants to respect what Neil wants. And he's like, all right, you know what? I'll go. You don't want me around here, so I'll go. Which takes us to one of my favorite sequences, just the whole car rental aspect of it. Neil, after being dropped off by the bus to pick up his car, the car isn't there. So now he has to walk miles back. And I love, with the stewardess, who's also, we saw in Ferris Bueller. As the secretary. Fun fact, she was only supposed to kind of be like on the phone when he came. She was supposed to say, "Okay, thank you," and then get off the phone. But then the director kind of wanted more from her, so he said just ad lib. So her whole sequence before meeting him is all just made up on the spot, which I thought was great.
Oh, that's cool. It made it so much better because it's like, oh, here's the person that is about to have her day completely flipped.
Right.
Having a great fun conversation with an old friend, which is always common in a movie. And then here's Fucky McFuckerson coming over.
The many fucks. This movie is known to have 18 fucks said in 60 seconds. I was like, okay. That whole sequence, he sells it so well, but it's so unexpected for me, at least. Yeah. And I wonder if at the time it was also unexpected. I don't know. How did the world see Steve Martin at that time? Yeah. I think it was.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, years ago, I read one of his biographies of like when he first started doing stand-up, and he never came across as someone that did a lot of crude comedy. It was very slapstick, very much audience interaction. He was just goofy, very much like his role in The Jerk. That was his shtick, in stand-up. So like to hear him just line after line, just fuck. It was kind of like, this is kind of like your nice, cousin or uncle up, like knowing that you're not impenetrable, like something can still get to you. And so it was like, yeah, okay, I buy this because this doesn't sound like him, but it also, to like close people, maybe this is.
And I think that's what makes it work.
Yeah.
Because again, for the character, this is the character's moment also just like breaking down. So for us to be like, oh shit, that's Steve Martin doing that, it adds more weight to the character's frustrations. And fun fact, this scene, along with another scene that comes later, is one of the reasons Steve Martin signed on to this film. We read it like, yep, I like this.
Yeah.
He's like, I want to swear, and it's the reason why the movie has an R rating. By the way, if it wasn't for this scene, this movie would be PG-13.
I believe it too.
Right.
Everything else about it is like pretty clean, for the most part.
With his frustrations, the woman's like, "You're fucked," which means I don't have nothing for you. And he tries to take a cab, and I love he insults the cab driver, who punches him in the face. And this is what we talked about earlier on about Del almost hitting him with his car, because Del was able to get a car. And Del says to him, go with the flow, go with the flow. And again, that go with the flow mentality of Del's makes more sense when you know what his past is. He stopped making plans in his life because I guess he just doesn't care anymore, so he just goes with the flow. Which takes us to Act 3, automobiles. They're driving in the highway, and I love the sequence where Del plays with the seat so much that when it's Neil's time to sit in the seat, it's broken. And Del's like, well, when I was using it, it wasn't broken. It's like, yeah, because you broke it. Yeah. And then it takes us to one of a sequence which, your mileage may vary on this sequence because for some it could be jarring in terms of Del and the whole seatbelt shenanigans and just that whole disaster, which I found it hilarious, but I can understand why some people might be taken away from it.
It was peak farce, It was like, now this seems like an SNL sketch, where it's kind of like, okay, here is the butt of the joke, and this is why it's so funny. It's all related on the physical comedy of it. Him just something, again, we go back to something nobody would do, and that is keep driving while both of your hands are tied practically behind your back. Why would anyone keep doing this? Right. What does he have to prove to himself or to Neil?
Right. Who's sleeping?
Here we are.
Right. And again, in terms of directing, they do a good job of when he throws the cigarette and it gets stuck, but we don't see the ramifications of that right away, right? But we're constantly reminded, because even when Neil wakes up and they're like trying to figure out they're going the wrong way, if you pay attention, you see the smoke in the background starting up, right? But you don't really pay attention because of all the commotion.
That's right. I didn't, because of the whole people driving next to him.
Going the wrong way.
How do they know where we're going?
I love that line when it's like, how would they? It's like, yeah, how would they know?
Okay, druggie. Yeah.
And they finally, almost in an accident, realized that they were going the wrong way. And again, I love when they get out of the car. They're just like, nothing else could go wrong. Car lights on fire. and
then that's when it's appropriate for them just to break down laughing.
Just laughing. Yeah. And I like Neil's point, because it's like, it finally affected you. Like your shenanigans, your crazies, didn't always seem to affect Del. It always affected Neil more. And it's this is finally affecting you as well, Del. And I love that. And they finally go to another motel, but they can't really pay much because the cards were in the car and they all melted. But Del just had just enough to get himself a room. Neil gets just enough to get himself a room, but Del cannot. And Neil's like, fuck you can stay outside. And again, more moments we start seeing, Del unraveled, when he's talking to his wife and saying things like, wish you were here with me right now, but I guess that's not going to happen. We're thinking it's because of Thanksgiving, not that she's dead. And again, it's very smart the way it's done that. You can read it both ways. It works, and that's where, and he kind of admits to himself, like, I am being a pain in the butt. I find something that I like, and I think this is his moment of realization of how pushy he can be. And you almost get a sense that his wife has mentioned that to him in the past, because he says, you're right. You get a sense that this is not the first time he's been in this situation before.
Yeah, it's tricky, because obviously, knowing now what happened to his wife, maybe he's also now afraid to lose somebody else, knowing how easy it was for him to lose the love of his life. Like, oh man, I have a friend, like a new friend, and that like we're in this crazy circumstance that we must rely on each other. I will do everything to keep this going, hold this glue. So, before it sounded and seemed annoying, but now you feel sorry for him. It's like, oh, he only means well. It can be quite annoying, but there's a reason behind it all. Oh yeah. He's not a bad person. No, far from it.
And I think that's what Neil recognizes, right? Watching him outside, and it also reminds that Neil's not really a bad person, right? He's not going to leave him out in the cold by himself. Like, he may be going through bad things, and I think that's what the movie balances, right? they never quite take Neil all the way to asshole territory, and they never quite take Del to all the way to like fucking idiot territory.
Right.
Right? It's just they teeter on that edge, but by the time they come back together, you get it. So it makes sense when Neil kind of feels bad. It doesn't feel out of place for Neil to feel bad, and kind of brings it back in the room.
I think separately they could have gone that way, but
Mhm.
they balance each other out to prevent them from going too far
Mhm.
on either end of that spectrum.
Agreed, agreed. And then this is where they start to bond again. I love where they bond with the snacks and the drinks. It's a little moment
Mhm.
between them. And that's when Neil even says, a few years from now, I'm gonna look back at this and laugh. He's like, shit, I'm laughing already. So
Yeah.
this is when he starts to kind of relax a bit more. Yeah, and I like that. And they share stories about their wives. And again, little subtle hints what's happening to him. And I love that. Next morning, I love when they're stuck in the snow. And they like crash into the motel trying to get out. They're like, go, 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 quick, quick, quick. And driving that fucked up car, which they built, by the way. They built that car to run looking fucked up, which I thought was great.
How do they do that? Did they just like take a bunch of burnt pieces
I have
and
no idea how they
from
did
other cars? So like, all right, fooled me.
Right. And again, this is moments where the movie kind of plays into the slapstick moments where their hands were stuck on the dashboard or their
Yeah.
faces were freezing over. Depending on your mileage, that can take you out of the film or not. But it's the 80s.
Mhm.
I think it worked.
It,
I don't
it,
think they
it
would have done it
reminded
today.
me, obviously, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles did it first, but it reminded me a lot of the scene from Tommy Boy with Chris Farley and David
Okay.
Spade. They had also were like driving in. It was more of like all car,
Mhm.
but they were driving in this, convertible for a long time, perfect conditions. Starts off like he was making sure everything's polished, and then by the end, it's like you can't even get the top to like go down or up, so it's stuck in the convertible mode forever. There's no windshield and like no door. It's just like a gate, It's like it's just like this makeshift at like how they ever corrected this. So it's like the car almost plays a part in this too.
It's
And
part of the comedy.
yeah, exactly. All these transportation entities.
I mean, which plays into because they get stopped by the police for driving this car that shouldn't be driven.
Oh,
And
of course.
I
Yeah.
loved Del, right? And this in my mind, I mean, the movie. This is not the message the movie's playing on, but in my mind, I just thought white privilege because you're like, oh, I'm sorry, officer, I'll never do it again. Let me go. It's like, wait, what? No, it's not gonna work, and it doesn't work. And the car is impounded, and they need to find another mode of transportation. And Del again, Del knows everybody, which again hints at the fact that he's always traveling around. He's like, oh, I have a friend who has a truck, and they get in a truck, finally get to the train station. They say their goodbyes, and on the train, fun fact, that sequence on the train where Neil is kind of like reminiscing,
Yeah.
that Steve Martin didn't know he was being filmed. I think he touched on it. I think we touched on it.
Yeah.
That's the scene. He didn't realize he wasn't being filmed. The director was just rolling,
Right.
and the director was like, I like this moment because it seemed earnest. Those were
Right.
Steve Martin just reacting. I don't know what he was reacting to, but he didn't think he was acting. So he had no idea he was acting. And this is where you get flashbacks.
Yeah. I think I remember reading something like that too. Like Steve Martin was just thinking about the next lines,
Right.
the lines for the next scene.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's just a matter of like how that translated through his face. And like,
Mhm.
you know what? Who cares what you're thinking? It's
Right.
just reading the way it should,
Mhm.
the way, the director wanted it to. So
Mhm.
it's nice how that magic like that can happen.
Mhm. And I think they did a very good job of infusing the flashbacks because it didn't seem like there was thought put into it because he's thinking of his family. He's thinking of Thanksgiving dinner, and then quick moment he thinks of Del. Then he starts thinking, and then he starts putting two and two together, and he realizes, oh shit, and that's when the realization happens. And I think it's done so well because we realize it as he realizes it. It's almost this kind of like same time balance.
Mhm.
And runs back to the train station, and it's like, what are you doing here, Del? And that's when Del says to him, I don't have a home. My wife's been dead for 8 years, and it's just like, oh. And you as the audience, just like Neil, get a flashback of all the conversations that I've had, and you're like, wow, that does make sense. And he invites him home, and I think it ends up being a great Thanksgiving story because it starts off about a film about a guy trying to get home for Thanksgiving, and it becomes about a guy making a friend who needed a family for Thanksgiving. And I think that's where the heart comes into the film. I think other films would have had that ending feel corny, but I think they balance it well with heart.
Yeah, some people could see it as a little corny, but it had a lot of heart to it. The same way as that kind of outing that Del and Neil had with each other back in the hotel room, the first one, and you thought, wow, this is like, they're really cutting to the core of each other pretty early on. But it does hit home. Like this movie has a lot more than just like slapstick comedy, and at face value, that's kind of what I was expecting before going into this. And like I mentioned before, this was the first time I saw this, and so walking in, I thought, well, these two comedic geniuses, this is just going to be, I saw it also with it's like a road trip film, so I associated movies like Tommy Boy with it too, where it was very, odd couple-y, circumstantial comedy where the third character was where they were and where they were going. So to see that this had a little bit more depth into it than most other comedies that have to do with those same themes was a great surprise. I enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I was. Not my favorite John Hughes film, but in terms of at least his films, this was still up there for me.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, again, this is a film that has some nuance to it that you can miss because you're so enamored by the comedy and all that kind of stuff. The nuances of what's helped the movie stand the test of time, including the chemistry between the two leads. I think the chemistry is what also sells the film, right? It doesn't matter what's happening as long as these two characters are together, and you're always with them in this journey and wondering where the next stage of the journey is going to go. That's what you care about. You don't so much care about Neil getting home in time for Thanksgiving as much as these two characters going on a journey. It's very much a journey film. Like we said last week, it's not about Thanksgiving, it's about getting home. Like you said, it may not be my favorite John Hughes movie, but I enjoyed it. I thought it was a good movie.
I don't get many Thanksgiving movies either. No. The fact that John Hughes, of all people, gave us one. And the fact that no one's really done anything like it until this remake that we're supposed to be getting with Will Smith and Kevin Hart.
Yes, which I'm very interested to see how that turns out and to see who's playing who, which would be, I think both can play either character, but I'm interested to see what the choices are. And on that note, I hope everyone listening, you all have a fun and safe Thanksgiving in this COVID times where we all have to be apart from each other. I think we can all still have fun through social media and video chats and stuff like that. So stay safe, people. Stop traveling, because if you try and travel, you will have issues at some point or other. And thank you, Mike, as always.
Thank you, English Dave.
Thank you guys for listening. My name is English Dave, and this has been part 2 of our Planes, Trains, and Automobiles Back to the Feature. And as always, Mike,
keep it nerdy.
Keep it nerdy, nerds. Peace.